Hey, what's up, guys? This is Wednesday, 5th period, Computer Science 2. I'm going to do a little recap of our project so far and then talk about where you might go next. If you are doing well and really on the ball, you might not need the first few minutes of this, but I want to make sure that nobody gets behind and nobody is lost saying, wait, what are we doing? What is this? So I made a post today which has everything you might need. It's got lots of links. And so this is the link for the video you're watching right now. If you're watching it live, that's cool. If you watch it later, same link, same thing. And here's a playlist of the tutorial series that we based our project on. It's a guy showing 4 videos of Pong using Python and Pygame. Python is the language we're using. Pygame is a library of code that is pre-made for you that has stuff with drawing rectangles, drawing circles, having a little bit of visual representation of those things in a window. And it has sound, which we haven't used. It has other things, which we might get to later. The first one is just theory, just the concepts. What kind of stuff would you need to do? And he writes it on a notepad but doesn't start making it. The second one, he makes the walls and he shows how to make a window and the 3 rectangles for the walls, because in this version it's a single player. You're bouncing off the walls like a racquetball version of Pong instead of the original tennis where you have 2 players. But of course, if you make that, you'll eventually be able to turn it into the tennis version pretty quickly, right? The third one has the ball, the bouncing, the sort of physics of it, collision, how do you know when it's touching, and then it has to switch direction, and how do you do that? And it also has a bit of the controls. So the way he sets it up is the control just follows your mouse. The paddle is just moving wherever your mouse does. And that's obviously pretty easy. You can do it with 1 line of code, actually. If you end up making a 2-player version, you can't do that for both, because most computers are not going to have 2 mice on there. But that's a good start, right? And then the last one, it gets pretty complicated. I haven't shown it in class, and I might not, or I might do it near the end. He talks about making a computer player, and instead of just doing it a simple way, he's just doing it where it's sort of almost like matching your moves, like what you've done in the past. And it's a cool thing, but I'm not going to do it. So you can use that. And if you want an example of the basic version, I put it into a replit. It's not exactly the same as he did, because I just, wanted to use my style, and there are a few things that I organized in a different way. For example, this function here is totally different from the way he does it, but it's the same result. You would never notice. It's just, I think it looks prettier this way to separate these things into different parts and then organize them at the end. So if you hit run, if it works, I'm going to click once in the window because sometimes you have to. Then I am bouncing the ball off the paddle. I'm making the paddle move up and down with my mouse. And whenever the ball hits it, it will detect that, turn around, bounce off the walls, detect them, turn around, and there we are. This is your first assessment, to make this. A ball bouncing off the walls and 1 paddle. You can make it move whatever speed you want. You can make the colors whatever you want. All of that stuff is up to you. But this is what you need to make. The walls, the ball, the paddle, the controls. There's some wonky things, like if you move it into the wall, then it kind of destroys the color. It turns it black, and then it looks like there's a hole there, which is a bit weird. If you don't set up the collision correctly, then the ball comes back like it just did there, which I will have to get into and figure out how to change that. The collision currently is a pretty quick thing. It's just testing, are you hitting vertical, are you hitting, or this is, are you hitting horizontal, are you hitting vertical, is it in the middle of the paddle, and then if it's in one of those things, then it bounces. Obviously we need to make it a little more complicated. So there are a couple assignments in the grade book to make the balls, to make the ball, etc. But then the first assessment, sort of big grade, is to get that version with all of those things working. Okay, you don't have to do it exactly the way I did. For example, I made it start where the ball moves in a random direction. I just thought that would be fun, because if I'm trying to run it a million times, I don't want it to be exactly the same sequence every time. I thought it would be fun to mix it up. You do not have to do that at all. You can start it in the same direction every time. I think the example in the tutorial just has it going up and left, so like 45 degrees that way. I guess that would be 135 if you're doing it in math class terminology. I don't know. That is what you want to aim for. If you're not there yet, get the walls, get the bounce, get the paddle control. Okay? If you want to look at mine, great. If you want to look at his code in the video, it is a little different. Totally fine either way, and there are probably other ways to do it too. For example, I made functions with no argument, with no parameters. The way that the guy in the video, Isaac, does it is he has show with a color, so that you will show the paddle or show the ball, turn it into the background, and then move it, turn it into its own color. Obviously, that's what happens, however you describe it. But the way he describes it is do it with the color and then do it again with another color. The way I describe it is hide and then show as separate things. Mine is a little bit longer, but I like the just English language look of it, where you say hide and then you say show. That is a little prettier to me than saying show with one color and then show again with another color. However, I don't care. You do what works. Okay, you don't have to copy me. You don't have to copy him. You should use your own style. And that is the first assessment. Okay, some of you guys are really close. And I think 1 or 2 people are past it. But if you're not, that's okay. We've got 2-ish weeks until I really want to get this stuff done. So don't wait, but you don't have to rush. You're still on track. Next, once you get that basic thing, 3 walls, bounce, ball, it works. It might not work 1000% perfectly like mine. It has that situation where it bounces back sometimes after it gets off screen. Now, how could I deal with that? I could get the collision more precise so that it never bounces when it's not supposed to. Or maybe I could make it so that the ball just disappears. Once it's off screen, it doesn't exist anymore, and there's no chance it can do anything. I don't know. We'll figure that out. Let me look at the chat, see if there's anything in the chat. Sorry, I kind of forgot about it. There's nothing at the moment, so that's okay. Now, once you get that, that's not it, right? That's not our final version. That's not very cool. You want to take that basic setup and branch off into your own direction. You might add more objects. So I made an example with 2 balls bouncing around. Everything else is exactly the same. And in fact, it only takes 3 lines to make this happen, because once you make the class for the ball, you just have to make another one, bring it into existence in the first place, and then update it every frame. So that's a great example of our object-oriented programming type advantages, where once you make the class, you can make another object in that class super easily. So it's not like this was a lot of work. I made 3 lines, I think, to change the version into 2 balls. But the idea is a good one. Once you make a second ball, maybe you do a different color, or a different speed, or a different rule. Like maybe you try to hit one and try to avoid the other one. That would be a fun game, because then in your mind you have to keep track, you know? Recently I played this game called Ikaruga. You guys have heard of this game? Ikaruga, it's like a shoot 'em up, like a Space Invaders thing, where you're on the bottom of the screen shooting at bad guys. But everything is black or white, and you have to avoid the black ones and hit the white ones. Or at any moment you can switch polarity and then switch. You have to hit the black ones and avoid the white ones. And it's really fun to do that super quick. So you might do something cool like that. Once you have two balls, then you have to think about what if they hit each other. Then you have to get into the collision. Right now in my version, if they hit each other, they would go through like ghosts, but we don't like that. We want to add some good stuff, so I would add that if I was doing this type of project. Okay, another example, keyboard controls. So instead of mouse, you can move your guy with the keyboard. It might be slightly different on Chromebook. If I was doing this on my desktop, which I am, I'd want to test it on Chromebook because you never know, their mouse is different. It might have some slight variations. But in order to move your guy, it's not that hard. There's a module in Pygame for getting key inputs and then seeing what they are. So key.getPressed is like whenever the event happens of somebody pushing a key, and we're checking this every frame because the update function happens every frame. And if it's something else, if they hit F7, nobody cares. But if it's up, you move up. If it's down, you move down. And I picked 2 pixels, but you can pick whatever you want depending on the size of your screen and the speed you want to move at, etc. So if I hit run, it would look exactly the same as the other one, except I wouldn't be moving the mouse, I'd be moving my keyboard. And by the way, you have to click inside this little window once to sort of give it the focus. But once you do, it actually looks good. It looks a little smoother than the mouse version. And we can figure out how to sort of work with the frame rate and try to make this look a little smoother than it does. Look at that weird bounce. It sort of dragged along the paddle for a minute. We got to look at the collision in more detail. And I think Python or Pygame has some built-in collision physics. We might take advantage of those rather than trying to start from scratch, but I do like the idea of starting from scratch. So finally, I got to my goal, which was to have 2 paddles and the keyboard, because imagine you're playing this with another human. You can have one person use the up and down keys and another person use, you know, W and S, I think is what I chose, because the WASD are sort of classic movement buttons. So, by the way, at each of these examples, I put some comments, not only what it is, but like what the problems are or what I'm thinking of. So if you look at those, you got some good info. And on here, I made it twice as much. If you're the left player, I had to add a variable for that. If you're the left player, then W and S. And if you're the right player, you go up and down. So let me try that. I'm doing it with both hands, so it's going to be a little wonky, but and there's no way I'm actually going to follow. Whoa. It's working now. It took a second. There's no way I'm actually going to... I made the ball slower on this one too, because I think I knew it would be out of sync for a sec. So that's cool, right? I'm moving this with my left hand, which is theoretically another person, and then I'm moving this other one with my right hand. However, the collision is way harder when you're doing it from 2 directions, because let's let this one go off just to see if it works. The collision on the original one was, are we to the right of the paddle's edge? There was stuff with like, are you width minus border, which is like the whole screen minus the edge of the paddle. Are you to the right of that, and are you within the paddle itself and not above or below? You can't do that anymore once you make one on the other side, right? You can't just be to the right of the edge, because that has nothing to do with the left paddle. You have to be to the left of the other edge, and it becomes more complicated. Mine is not complete. It works okay, like you saw. It didn't completely go out of whack, but it is not perfect, and I have to add more to this to test whether it's touching the paddle. It bounces. If it's not, it doesn't. There are a few times when it bounces without touching it, which I'm not sure about. And then I added a little bit, which is if it goes off screen, then I just want it to stop and not keep bouncing. I'm going to look up how to delete an object, which there are a couple different functions for that. I got to figure out which one works best, which I think is what I'm going to do. Whenever you have something go off screen, you just make it stop existing. Hopefully that would help the look and the smoothness of the frame rate, because you're not calculating as many things, especially if the game gets complicated later and you add a bunch of stuff and it's coming in and out of existence. You want to make sure the strain on the processing is not too much, especially if we're doing it on Replit, because it's like, you know, we're using a tiny bit of power on a server somewhere in the world. It's not the same as running it on a PS5 or something where you have a dedicated computer just for that. So that is where we are. If you are still early on and you're trying to get the walls and the ball and the paddle, look at the video, especially video number 2, which, by the way, it's not called number 2, it's called actually, okay, maybe I should say it 1, because it's doing 2 things with the numbers. It's doing binary and it's starting at 0. Those are both computer-y things, you know. 0, 0 is 0, 0, 1 is 1, 1, 0 is 2, because in binary the second digit from the right is your 2, and then this one is 3 because it's 2 and 1. But when I say the second one, I mean the one that just has the 2 on YouTube. Classic, what do we call that? Arabic numerals, base 10. That's the one you want to look at for getting started, and then the next one is what you want to look at for finishing off the bounce and the controls. That will get you an assessment grade, and I know I have a few that have been turned in that I still need to grade. I've been doing parent conferences. I called a few people yesterday. I'll do a few more today just to check in and make sure nobody gets behind. Quick thing before I end this video, and I'm always trying to look over at the chat. There's no questions so far, but you know, if you want to say hi, feel free. This doc right here has the dates for the quarter. I didn't make it. It's a general thing, so you might see it in other classes too. Here we are in the e-learning week. We're in the middle of it. And then we have 2 big, normal, regular weeks. And after that, it's a little choppy. It's a little iffy because we have holidays, we have breaks, we have e-learning. Some people will be traveling, some people will be distracted, and I don't want to do big stuff at that time. I don't want to be turning in grades and trying to finish and make up and retake and edit all at the end. I want to turn it in here, okay? Then we can spend our last few days perfecting and polishing, and I might send one back and say, oh, fix this one thing. And I might send one back and say, done, great, perfect, 100 points. Last quarter, I had a few people like chat with me on the very last day and fix their stuff, which I did. I, you know, told people to jump on a Meet or go back and forth on Google Classroom questions, and I will do that, of course. I'm not going to say no, but it's not pretty, it's not organized, it's not good. Let's finish everything on November 20th, and then coast, and then have a nice time to get the grades, do a little finish, makeup, retake, extra, whatever we got to do, and look at some cool stuff. Ideally, and we'll see how it goes, but if you turn in your code and it actually works and it's actually good, then we can figure out how to publish it. Because the little Replit preview window is kind of weak. We want to do something full screen. We want to do something where you can run it on a Windows computer, or something where you can have sound, you know, a little more than just this. So I might find another website that does it. I might find a way to compile these into just maybe exe files or something a little more, you know, universal that you could send to your friends, or you could run it in your PC at home. That would be kind of fun, right? But not if we finish our replets on the last day, only if we have a little cushion at the end. So hopefully this helps. A few people were behind and they need to get going. If you look at this post, it'll have everything you need. And a few people are on track. I just saw one person turned in, I think, their first assessment today, so I'm going to look at it, see where they are. But just let me know, man. We've got some time. I don't want to rush you, but I don't want to wait until the last minute either. I have to say, pretty optimistic about these. So let's keep that attitude and let's make it happen. Thanks.